Hi, everybody. My name is Manish, and I'm a founder and CEO of KredX.
एक मिनट रुक जाओ, रेडी होने दो. चलो ये कर लेते हैं. This could be a great intro.
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn.
I'm sure you've heard of the saying, cash is king. And that's because cash is the lifeblood of any business. No matter how profitable a business is, it will not succeed without a healthy cash flow. In India, cash flows for small and medium enterprises have always been a challenge. Businesses get paid a few months after they deliver their products, and this causes stress on their cash flows. And this is where a company like KredX comes in. KredX helps businesses to get paid on their invoices within a few days instead of months. This practice is called invoice discounting, and KredX has made this whole process frictionless with the help of technology. KredX has onboarded lenders on the one side who are looking for short-term investments with good returns, and they have onboarded SMEs on the other side who are looking to get paid instantly on their outstanding invoices, thereby creating a win-win proposition for all stakeholders. In this episode of the Founder Thesis podcast, Akshay Dutt talks to Manish Singh, the founder of KredX, about his journey from working in financial institutions like HSBC and Capital One to starting KredX to solve the problem of access to credit.
So I joined City as a product manager, and then it was a good growth that was happening both for the company and for me. Company has gone, City Financial has gone from 50 branches to 356 branches in 2 years. Became the best known NBFC in the country, as in all Bajaj FinService fundamentally copied that model which City has championed at that time. We has a web-based system, हम लोग वो check print करते थे online सब कुछ. So all those things were, which is unheard of even today, was happening in 2003. And with that, I was start getting team to manage. And then I was started thinking, boss, I am just 2 years in fact corporate world, and I have to teach other people when I have so much more to get learn on my own. And that is the time I said कि यार ये ना हो पाएगा. This is like पहले खुद तो सीख ले, फिर तो किसी को सिखाएंगे कुछ क्या करना है. And that's the time when I decided कि नहीं यार, I have to move out of City. So joined HSBC, and HSBC में risk side में I joined risk. And then again 7-8 years in risk, different products, different verticals, वो grow होता गया. So HSBC, I was part of the US business of HSBC. So जो ये 2007-8 crisis आया था, so I was in the middle of the storm. So I literally, like when I'm saying middle of the storm, actually middle of the storm. I remember in 2006, I flagged off one strategy which eventually saved HSBC closer to $1.3 billion. And इस समय तक 2007 crisis आया नहीं था, मतलब it hasn't unfolded like on papers, right? And I said कि यार कुछ गड़बड़ हो रहा है, something is going screwed up, and we have to close this thing. And my sales head has said कि यार ये किस बंदे को लेके आया, कहाँ से लेके आया उसको.
HSBC was doing subprime lending, yeah? Like,
HSBC was doing subprime lending. Subprime में we are one of the topmost in US. Household finance था ना, HSBC was basically household finance.
so they had a very high exposure.
Very high exposure, and they are doing it. So the strategy which I asked them to close is going to impact our sales by $4 billion. But basically उसका charge off पे कुछ $1.3 billion का impact आ रहा था, right? So sales of $4 billion मतलब what HSBC might make maybe few $100 million out of it, but losing $1.3 billion doesn't make sense. So they are like ये पागल हो गया, $4 billion का portfolio close करने की बात कर रहे हैं.
Well, basically, you asked them to stop giving a certain type of loan. Yeah, stop lending to a certain audience. Huh?
I just said close कर दो. Then I presented it to my chief risk officer, and he said कि यार पहले उस बंदे को लेके आओ जिसने start किया था, because I want to fire that guy. But I think it was all good. Then way back in 2012, HSBC wanted to sold their credit card portfolio, not because it was making loss, but because it was the only portfolio जो US में उस समय बिक सकता था, because they're making too much money, and they were a shareholder in Note कि US business को hive off करो. So they sold it to Cap One as a part of the movement. I moved to Cap, worked there for 2 years. And that is the time when I decided to...
This is, again, you were sitting in India and managing.
Correct. So then that is the time when I decided कि यार अब क्या करना है, दूसरे बैंक को जाना है. Because by that time I was part of closer to 5 M&A within banks, where either I was part of the buying side or selling side, right? And each side has their own pros and cons in terms of it. So, and I pretty much realized कि यार ये बैंक में तो मतलब हो गया अभी ये इनका टॉप लाइन तो ग्रो कर नहीं रहा है तो बॉटम लाइन पे ही लगे पड़े हैं. So that's the time I said कि चलो let's do something of my own. And that's where my entrepreneurial journey started.
So how did you finalize what you want to do? Like you decided, "Acha, let's do something," and then, how did you finalize it?
Yeah, so a little bit of detour that I've taken in between is I had started a construction business in between, which was where I was doing some kind of government works, like government contract. I was taking and building some bridges, some roads, etc.
In Patna, in Bihar.
In Bangalore, in Karnataka. My graduation was in civil engineering, right? So थोड़ा बहुत itch था तो I thought चलो start करते हैं कुछ यही, that is the easiest one. And then on papers I was profitable, but cash flow का problem होने लगा because I was doing everything at a margin of 20-25%. But the problem was that I was not getting cash flow from the government. So if I'm raising an invoice, I didn't get paid for a year or 2 years kind of thing, right? So eventually I have to shut down because there is no cash flow. There is no money to do next. Right, it's all on papers. On papers, I'm profitable, I'm making money, but there's no money. So after Cap 1, I decided that I have to start. I thought that this is the one thing which we need to solve. And at that time, also, what happened is no banks was ready to give me loan because they want collateral, and I was not having collateral. Right, it's more of a cash flow movement that I was trying to do. I put my own money
For your construction business. You were trying for a loan.
for my construction business. Yes. So I know that there was this problem statement which is there, which is कि without collateral को पैसे मिलते नहीं है. And invoices में the money is getting stuck for ages at other governments or companies. So that was sort of premise or foundation of what I wanted to do next. Then I started researching and I realized there is a concept called hundi in India. You must have heard hundi बहुत पहले पापा चाचा लोग बात किया करते थे, right? So hundi is nothing but sort of, you can say, guilty होता था as in एक invoice जिस पे sign करके लिख देते थे कि this invoice is I'm approving this invoice and I will pay it to you in 90 days. And then people used to go and sell this invoice to somebody else, right? So India में Sindhi community are run right? So Sindhis are amazing in this financing. Sindhi, इसको हम लोग Sindhi loan कहते हैं, Sindhi ब्याज. So there was a large number of people who are just doing this, and there are tens of thousands of crores has been put by individual investors into these kind of things. But it's totally unorganized. It was like, yeah, I know you know somebody else. I realized that these
And इसमें typically like 90-95% cash मिल जाता होगा for the invoice. Like
correct. Exactly. So build on these two premises, I said, why can't we use, structure this entire thing and make it network neutral and make it more data and platform dependent rather than having mediator in दोनों के बीच. So on this concept, we started this entire story and then everything started adding up, right? So when we said that, okay, ठीक है, how to mitigate the risk? So we said that कि जो यहाँ पे buyer रहेगा, that needs to be a known party, right? If you are removing the mediator from between, the buyer needs to be a known party. So we said that the buyers has to be a large company, right? So let's say I'm a person and I'm a company. I'm raising an invoice to Tata Group. Tata Group has said कि हम 90 days में payment करेंगे, right? Now I have a choice to either wait for 90 days or I will sell this invoice to somebody else. Right now, that's somebody else who is buying what he is buying. Though he's buying an invoice from me, he's actually buying a liability of Tata Group. क्योंकि Tata Group के balance sheet पे तो it's put as a liability. Now, Tata Group का अगर आप normal papers market में buy करने जाओ, तो it might be available at X as a cost of fund.
What do you mean Tata Group के papers? What does that?
Papers means, let's say, bonds or corporate papers or CP and CD which companies raise to. Basically, Tata Group is trying to raise money on its own, right? वो अपने लिए पैसे raise कर रहा है. So उसका cost of fund X होगा. But यहाँ पे Tata Group का एक vendor है जो Tata Group की liability बेच रहा है, but he's selling at X plus Y. Right, so it's fundamentally arbitrage game बन जाता है. It's become an arbitrage game, which is fundamentally that when I'm buying from a vendor of Tata Group an invoice, though I'm buying it from that vendor at X plus Y cost, I'm actually buying a liability of a Tata Group at which may be available at X cost. So Y का मेरे पास net फायदा हो जाता है. So it becomes a very interesting asset class in that time. The people can invest in a very high quality papers at a higher kind of a yield, and that too for a very small period. राइट, तो यहाँ पे 3 साल 5 साल का गेम नहीं है, यहाँ पे 90 डेज का आप गेम खेल लो, राइट? सो आपको ज्यादा देर रुकना नहीं पड़ रहा है. सो द क्वेश्चन रिमेन्स इज कि यार व्हाट इफ टाटा ग्रुप डिफॉल्ट्स, राइट? So the answer to is Tata Group is not going to default in 90 days, right? Because the period is very small. तो 90 days में अगर कुछ हो रहा है तो आपको पता चल ही जाएगा कि क्या होने वाला है. When we started putting up all the pieces of the puzzle together, we realized, yeah, this is our new asset class. Though initially we thought it is becoming too good to be true because आपका सारा चीज check पड़ रहा था. You are saying high yield, you are saying low risk, you are saying show less maturity, right? So in a way you are saying कि यार आपको high return भी मिलेगा, आपको low risk भी है, lesser maturity भी है, तो इससे अच्छा product क्या होगा?
नहीं, बट रिस्क एक और भी तो है ना, अगर उस वेंडर का माल में क्वालिटी डिफेक्ट आ गया.
करेक्ट. सो व्हाट वी डू इज कि हम लोग एक्सेप्टेड इनवॉइसेस लेते थे. सो व्हाट वी डू इज कि जैसे कि आपने 100 रुपए का इनवॉइस रेज किया टू टाटा ग्रुप, वी विल आस्क द परमिशन फ्रॉम टाटा ग्रुप, दिस इज एन एक्सेप्टेड इनवॉइस, राइट? सो दैट इज वन थिंग. सो nobody can give us a fraud invoice. The second theory that we also put up is कि we don't fund the 100% of the. तो हम what we looking into, हम previous records देख के we find it out कि जनरली इसका क्वालिटी कंसर्न कितना होता है. सो लेट्स से आपका क्वालिटी कंसर्न कुछ भी नहीं होता. देन ऑल्सो वी टेक 20% मार्जिन. सो इंस्टेड ऑफ 100 rupees आई विल गिव यू 80 rupees, एंड व्हेन द 100 rupees will come to me, then I will release back the 20 rupees back to you. But let's say आपका क्वालिटी कंसर्न 5 rupees का हमेशा होता है. So now 95 will become my new 100 and I will still take 20% margin on 95 rupees, right? So मेरा हमेशा 20% का मार्जिन होता ही होता था on for any kind of unseen scenarios that will come up.
तो बेसिकली द वेंडर स्टिल हैज स्किन इन द गेम. उसको पूरा
The vendor is a skin in the game and they want to have a skin in the game, right? Because let's say if I will tell you that यार मेरे को 100 का 100 दे दो, and what will happen if tomorrow payment will not come? I will go to Tata Group and or the buyer and I will say पैसे दे दो, तो बोलेंगे यार मेरा relationship खराब कर रहे हो तुम, right? So that's why they say कि नहीं, I want to do the management, the collection management नहीं करूँगा. So most of the vendor is like writing to the buyers on themselves saying that what is the default, वो सब बता दो. So what is the credit debit note, वो सब बता दो, right? So all those things will always comes to you, right? So from that perspective, they want to manage the relationship. That is good for us because they know the buyer seller relationship much better than us. And then we have this, and there is also the skin in the game कि वो 20% जब पैसे मिलेंगे तभी रिलीज.
बट वो टाटा ग्रुप की पेमेंट वेंडर को जाएगी या सीधा आपको आएगी?
So what we have done is we done an escrow arrangement. So we created an escrow account for them and all the payments get routed to us. So the payment comes to us and from there we route it to the vendor, or in this case if investors has invested then investor को चला जाता है, जो 20% होता है वो vendor को चला जाता है.
Got it. And did you see this as like a peer-to-peer thing? That
Not exactly. So this is not fundamentally.
HNIs can come in and
Yeah, but this is not a peer-to-peer lending perspective, though it's still peer-to-peer, but it's not a lending because a discounting is not a lending, right? आप क्या कर रहे हो कि आप एक asset खरीद रहे हो. So when I raise an invoice, what I do is in my balance sheet, I put an entry as account receivables, which sits on my asset side, right? It's similar to putting up a chair or a laptop on the asset side, right? So you are selling that asset. आप बोलो कि यार 100 रुपए का ये assets था मेरे पास, मैं इसको 95 rupees में बेच रहा हूँ, right? And the guy who's purchasing, he's saying कि इस 95 rupees का 90 days के बाद मुझे 100 rupees मिल जाएगा, इसलिए आई एम बाइंग इट, राइट? सो उसने बाई कर दिया अपने साइड पे एसेट.
हाँ, मुझे मतलब कुछ 6-7% अर्निंग हो जाएगी.
करेक्ट. And I have moved the account receivables from a balance sheet to a P&L. मैंने जैसे ही 100 रुपए का बेचा, मैंने बोला कि अच्छा 100 रुपए का मैंने 95 rupees रेवेन्यू ऐड कर लिया एंड 5 rupees अगर डिस्काउंटिंग कमीशन और डिस्काउंटिंग कॉस्ट उसको एक्सपेंस में डाल दिया, right? So it's not a lending because it moves from a balance sheet to a P&L.
Right. Okay. And the party which is buying it, these are what? Are these NBFCs who do it, or these are just like any kind of?
This could be anybody. Now, once you put this as an equation, right, then anybody can be a partner. It is more like an exchange, right? So you can have a HNI buying it, you have a family office buying it, you have a corporate treasury buying it, you have a NBFC buying it, you have a bank treasury buying it. So anybody can buy it because now fundamentally it's a paper that you are buying. So आपका एंड ऑफ द डे ट्रांजेक्शन क्या हो रहा है? एंड ऑफ द डे ट्रांजेक्शन ये हो रहा है कि वन ऑफ द बैंक्स ट्रेजरी और एनबीएफसी ट्रेजरी और कॉर्पोरेट ट्रेजरी और एचएनआईज, दे आर बाइंग एन इनवॉइस which is a liability on a large rated company's books and you're keeping it in your books, right? So it's more like a bond or corporate papers that you are buying. It's just that it's a very liquid because 30 से 90 days में आपको पैसे मिल जा रहे हैं.
And the yield is higher than buying bonds.
Yield is much higher than buying a bond or a paper. Correct.
Got it. So essentially this then becomes a marketplace as an alternate marketplace to a debt market.
Correct. So it's more like an exchange where anybody wants to sell these kind of account receivables or other things, they can sell it and anybody can come and buy it. And let's say we also created a secondary cell for that. So if let's say I am holding a 90 days paper and somebody wants to sell it within 30 days because usko paise chahiye the, so he can come and further sell it to some other investors also. Right. So all these options, so it's fundamentally becomes more like an exchange layer. आपके पास एक assets है, स्टॉक की जगह यहाँ पे इनवॉइसेज है, आपने इनवॉइसेज बेचा, किसी और ने खरीदा, किसी और ने बेचा, किसी और ने खरीदा.
Got it, got it. And which is why you probably named it KredX. It's like a credit exchange.
Yeah, actually, it's a very interesting name or renaming that has happened in KredX. So initially, when we started, the company name was Mandi. So people was totally divided on Mandi as a name, right? There are people who are saying that yeah, just तुम्हें मंडी के basis पे 200-300 crore की funding हो जाएगी. That name is so catchy. And there are people who are saying कि यार ये मंडी क्यों नाम रखा है? मंडी की में तो बहुत रिस्क होता है. So is it more riskier here? So then we started thinking here, if we have a global ambition, then we have to rename it to something which is neutral. So we started looking out. So एक दिन बैठ all of us were brainstorming क्या नाम होना चाहिए. So we started doing, or after 5 hours of brainstorming, we come to a name called KredX. So KredX से credit दे आए हम. And just to sounds cooler, we name it. We said instead of C, we'll have a K. So we put it Cred. तो क्रेड तो हो गया था. उसके बाद one of the guys says KredX, let's put X, and everybody said yeah अच्छा लग रहा है, चलो let's do a dipstick.
So tell me about your go to market, your launch, your 0 to 1. So 2014 you quit your job कि कुछ करना है. फिर you obviously had no prior experience of starting a business. तो आपने वो start कैसे किया, उसकी funding कैसे करी? वो initially you would probably need to also have, like say a Tata, these kind of corporates, you would need to have some sort of a partnership with them also.
Sure. So I think पहले ही start हो गया था. So we started it in 2013 September, and the first leg was being fintech and financing. First leg was always regulatory. तो वो regulatory, we went into regulatory. So बहुत सारे lawyers से मिला, बोला कि देखो ये करने का है. And almost I think 99% of the lawyers said कि यार ये नहीं हो सकता. Like the first thing you discuss, like within half an hour, what are you saying? This it cannot happen. And for few months we are like कि यार शायद नहीं हो सकता है, right? But वो itch थी कि नहीं यार ये लग तो रहा है कि हो सकता है. Like what is wrong in that? So I actually started reading legal books on my own. So I purchased like 20-30 different legal books और Google पे भी सर्च करके कि खूब सारे legal पढ़ा. And then we started going to the lawyers, and when the lawyer says ये नहीं हो सकता, we started asking कि यार क्यों नहीं हो सकता? Which law? Tell me the law. As per contract law, this happens. As per this law, this happens. As per Banking and Financial Services Act, this happens. Then the lawyer started taking us seriously that boss, we can't just say नहीं हो सकता, right? We have to tell him that why it cannot happen. So then they started going deeper into it. Okay, what do you mean by this? What exactly is? How the accounting will happen? So then we started telling all those things. Parallelly, what we also did is we started getting in contacts with RBI. So there was a professor at that time in Bangalore. So I reached out to him and I asked him for guidance and mentor. He was also a director in RBI. So I asked him that if he can reach out to folks in RBI and maybe get some initial buying. So he said RBI as a regulator cannot give you anything officially, but I can get something like, just pass it through people to get the initial feedback. So he helped us a lot in terms of, fine-tuning the entire piece of the puzzle. We even went to RBI's Pune campus once to present it to a larger audiences in RBI and other things. Overall, we realized that it's possibly not something which we are doing illegally. It's something maybe it's in a gray zone which never have been looked by the regulators. Possibly is ahead of time in terms of that. So that gives us a lot of sort of confidence to move ahead with. We started working on it.
So you were alone so far, or did you have a co-founder?
So first initial, I think 8 months I was doing it on my own. पहले खुद को आ जाना चाहिए कि हाँ मतलब ये workable है. And then after that, I reached out to a few friends कि साथ में करते हैं. And then Anurag was my batchmate from IT days, winmate and batchmate. So I spoke to Anurag से हाँ करते हैं. So that's when Anurag also came. So this was I think before we start working on MVP, but most of the legal related चीजें काफी कुछ I was pretty sure कि हो सकता है. And then we started working on MVP. So MVP में we mostly outsource the tech part of it क्योंकि none of us was techies. ठीक है, कुछ एक ठीक ठाक product तो दिखना चाहिए.
इसमें आपको क्या चाहिए था as a product? You needed something where people can upload an invoice and invoices की listing हो जाए जो investors can pick and choose.
And correct. And initial product was more on bid and auction model. So, you will bid for it, कि ये इसके invoices है, and there will be investors who will be bidding. saying that हाँ मेरे को इतने को चाहिए, and then the vendor will accept it. So initial product was an entire big auction model. Though I used a little bit of my product knowledge from my city days. So for our financial product करके कुछ बना लिया. And then we did a lot of sort of growth hacks in terms of, थोड़ा PR इधर उधर से किया, for some numbers here and there quote करके. And then parallelly we started fundraising process also. So we spoke to few.
नहीं, but आपके इनवॉइस अपलोड होने से पहले you needed a corporate tie-up, right? With the party जिसके नाम का इनवॉइस है. Did you need that or that was not needed?
Not necessarily, not a corporate tie-up per se, but fundamentally we have a process in place where we say कि the corporate undertaking sort of what we call is internally is that we will always pay the money into account and we will never change the account without NOC of KredX that this will work with us. So we don't need a sort of that.
तो ये वेंडर की फिर रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी थी क्योंकि अगर उसको फंड चाहिए तो वो कॉर्पोरेट से.
Yes, and we are too small at that time to go to corporate and say यार आप अपने सारे वेंडर्स दे दो मैं फंड. प्लस उस समय तक इंडिया में इट वाज अनहर्ड ऑफ कि लोग किसी न्यू एसेट क्लास में ऑनलाइन योर claim to fame is high return, low risk and less maturity rate. So that's the reason why we said कि यार नहीं मतलब we have to build it up, right? So and पैसे तो यहाँ पे सबको चाहिए, right? But all the vendors, all the everybody needs. So we were sure about कि vendor side we will solve. Let's try to first solve on the investor side of it. So and we built the MVP. We have started. There were few early adopters who was completely unknown to us.
These are like vendors. You would first need vendors, ना? क्योंकि इन्वेस्टर को बुलाने के लिए.
Both sides. So we went to Flipkart. We talked to Flipkart. Flipkart में senior लोगों से बात किया. Used our IT contacts, our previous experiences and all. And we said कि यार थोड़े बहुत आप लोग Flipkart के vendors दे दो. So I remember my first vendor was a Flipkart vendor basically. So we got the Flipkart to say that.
And this would be a marketplace seller or like a vendor?
No, these are vendors who are selling to entity like WS Retail and who are fundamentally Flipkart entity only.
Okay. Like logistics partners and
logistic partners who are even
human resources.
selling to WS Retail. Not only human resource, but they're selling to WS Retail. Right, so they're part of the bigger like आपका cloud tail को sell कर रहा है Amazon. Right, so it's a fundamentally Amazon. So उस तरीके का these are suppliers and vendors to these Flipkart entity. तो उसको onboard किया and then we so एक side में हो गया कि चलो ठीक है we'll get some few vendors to come on board and we'll start with Flipkart. Then that time we also went to Urban Ladder. Urban Ladder was there, so I went and meet the founders and get some Urban Ladders. We also used some of our contacts to get some of the other vendors also जहाँ से मिल सके. So we got like 5-10 vendors इधर ready थे कि हाँ भाई पैसे उठा सकते हैं.
ये e-commerce companies पे तो इतना long payment period नहीं होता ना, मतलब वो they pay
30 days 90 days. तो बिल्कुल सबको मालूम चाहिए होता है, राइट? अगर आप जाके बोल रहे हो कि यार आपके वेंडर को पैसे मिल जाएंगे यार आप मुझे 90 days से पैसे दे दो तो वो भी खुश है, उसका भी मतलब he's also getting his working capital fast in that time. तो उसका भी working capital problem solve हो रहा है. So that's we were doing it. So Flipkart, some of the e-commerce companies and e-commerce में भी ना अलग अलग है. So in certain cases they do payment in 30 days, in certain cases they do payment in 90 days also. Mix करके था, but we get like good 5-10 vendors का base मिल गया था. We can start doing all those. And parallelly we started working on investor side, which was like tough nut to crack. So initial there were some early adopters who were completely unknown. उन्होंने हमारी कहीं story पढ़ी and then after reading our story. So basically हमने I think got our story published in your stories and some of the other media thing and they read and they said कि यार concept बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. There are few Cindy's जो कि पहले से करते आए थे हुंडी वाला. तो उन्होंने बोला कि यार ये तो बहुत अच्छा है. If I can work with you, then I can scale up much faster. So some people get joined there. Some of our
one question, जो investor जो invest करेगा तो वो कैसे like वो payment gateway अपने क्या था अपनी site पे for them to buy that या
नहीं वो उनके साइड में भी escrow account ही था. उनके साइड में भी escrow account है. So they will do a NEFT or RTGS transfer to the escrow account and then from escrow account it further deployed to the vendor.
ये escrow account क्या होता है? How is it different from a normal account?
So escrow account is fundamentally sort of, you can say, is a trustee account, right? So bank is a trustee for that. It's a escrow agent, right? So you put the money into the bank and bank becomes a custodian who says कि the fund can only be utilized for these purposes, right? So you cannot take the money. So it's like जैसे so it's uses, let's say आपने दो लोगों ने contract आपस में किया, right? और आपने कुछ पैसा डाला, मैंने कुछ पैसा डाला, एक escrow account में डाल दिया. एंड बैंक उसका कस्टोडियन है एंड बैंक बोलेगा कि ठीक है और आप दोनों ने अरेंजमेंट किया इफ दिस कंडीशन आर नॉट मेट देन रिलीज द मनी टू मनीष सो व्हेन दिस द वर्क विल हैपन इट्स डन देन the bank will take a charge and say कि अच्छा पैसे किसको लीज करें based on that. So consider escrow is more like a bank account. It's also considered as a bank account. It's bank के PNL में रखता है and बैंक उसका custodian हो जाता है. So it's not like कि आपने ट्रांसफर कर दिया तो मेरी राइट्स हो गया मैं जाके कुछ जो चाहो कर सकता हूँ. So it's completely safe account from that perspective.
Right. And for you also, it's less administrative overhead because that money you don't have to make the entry for every transaction. You only have to make the entries for what is your share in this.
Yeah, that's also true. But I think the bigger concern was more about the trust factor, right? So I'm a new entity, a new startup. How can you make people trust you, right? So you bring somebody whom people trust, which is a bank, right? Nobody is better than a bank to trust. And you assign the bank as a escrow agent or a trustee. And you say now bank is taking care of the money. Bank will make sure that this money, I'm not just, using it for other, or I'm not funneling it to my account, right? So that's where the bank comes into play. So that's the reason why we have done it.
And yeah, every time an invoice was discounted or an invoice was sold, then you would send the instructions to the bank like a agreement की copy कि ये agreement है ये इतना इसको इतना इसको इतना इसको इस date पे ये is.
Correct. Absolutely.
But it's like a very manual process for the bank. Like they manually.
It was initially a little bit of manual, then bank also evolved. We also evolved and we created an API in that. And bank was only to more like sample testing rather than each testing, right? So it's more like they do audit in terms of, so in your escrow, nodal accounts are get audited by RBI also. So when marketplaces started becoming mainstream in India, RBI came up with a new accounts called concept, which is saying that if you are buying something from a marketplace, that money does not belong to the marketplace. It money belongs to the seller, right? So वो एक nodal account में पड़ा रहता है और nodal account से and they have some guidelines in terms of the T+3 days के अंदर you have to do the transaction and all those. So there are a lot of ifs and buts into those nodal account and then also it gets audited on a quarterly basis. So there is a CA which gets appointed by the bank who audits that you have followed the rules or not. So it is just a very evolved and more trustable instrument as compared to any normal account.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with banks, we able to get into it, and we now have 3 banks who are partnering with us: ICICI, DBS, and Yes Bank, where we have the nodal escrow arrangement, and they all work for this system. So अब तो ये काफी common account हो गया. When we started it, it was a innovation sort of, because I remember when we spoke to the bank said कि यार ये सब नहीं हो सकता, this cannot be done.
Yeah.
And we thought at that time that the smaller banks will possibly will give us. So we went to the smaller banks at that time. It was Kotak, Yes Bank, and IndusInd Bank. But none of these banks was able to give us at that time. While we got a surprise when ICICI Bank was said that yeah, we can give it to you. And I remember I had a meeting in MG Road branch, and I said how soon, and they said within 10 days, and I was like shocked. I was like, great. Let's do it. So yeah, but it was a great help from ICICI at that time, and they able to pull it off and they able to deliver on this entire piece.
Okay. So let me recap how you put the pieces together. So you went to your network of folks in e-commerce companies like Flipkart, Urban Ladder, वहां से अपने vendor source किए, and you told those vendors that you can get instant cash up account या अपना invoice या upload करना शुरू करो. Then you created this escrow system so that the money transaction flows through that escrow, and then you went to find investors. Some were HNIs, some were family offices, that you can get better return on your money. Like if you want to park money instead of parking it in debt, why don't you use this?
Correct. And I remember escrow was actually the escrow setup took the longest time at least. And I remember when my team has said कि अगर ये नहीं हो पाएगा तो company बंद कर देते हैं because you can't work without it. And I've been told that कि तुम्हारे पास 1 महीना है, 1 महीना में देख लो, 1 महीने में you can do this, तो ठीक है, नहीं तो फिर बताओ, हम वापस सब लोग अपने अपने घर जाते हैं. And I was like, नहीं यार, रुचो, wait, let me try to do, let me see what can be done, because we had already spoken to 3-4 banks by that time, and it was becoming really painful to do this entire process. And luckily we did ICICI at that time and be able to pull it off.
तो इसमें how are you earning in this? Like अगर 100 रुपए का invoice है.
So similar to an exchange, what we do is take on annual platform fee, और आपके डीमैट चार्जेस कहते हो उसमें उस तरीके का आप ले लो कि एक चार्ज होता है जो एनुअल चार्ज होता है. That is one. And then from the vendor, and from the guys who was selling, who was getting the money, basically. And then I take a transaction cost from both the sides. So I take from vendor also for each invoice that gets sold. I take something from vendor also. I can take something from investor also.
How much is that? Like,
Yeah, it depends upon at what is the cost that they are selling. But typically, I can take roughly around 1% from both the side on an annualized basis, not on a per transaction basis, but on an annualized basis, I take 1% from both the side.
If you like to hear stories of founders, then we have tons of great stories from entrepreneurs who have built billion-dollar businesses. Just search for the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app like Spotify, Gaana, Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to the show.
वो 90 days का फिर वो accordingly recorded, ठीक है. And so then, what kind of traction did you see? When did your first transaction happen? When was the first invoice bought?
So first transaction happened in July of 2015. That is or I think more of 27th or 28th of June 2015. So that is the first transaction that we have happened. I think उस समय तक सिस्टम बन ही रहा था और आई वुड रादर से कि सिस्टम बन क्या रहा था, मतलब वी वर डूइंग मोर ऑफलाइन ट्रांजेक्शन रादर देन ऑनलाइन. तो वो फोन पे ज्यादा कनेक्शन होता मिला, आपको अग्रीमेंट मिला, आप अग्रीमेंट साइन कर दो, आप अग्रीमेंट साइन कर दो, एंड देन अच्छा सर आप यहाँ से यहाँ पर से ट्रांसफर कर दो. सो ऑल दोस थिंग्स वाज मोस्टली हैपनिंग एट दैट टाइम. बट सो दैट वाज द इनिशियल स्टेज और पैरेलली वी वर बिल्डिंग द
ये अग्रीमेंट साइन किस चीज का हो रहा है? व्हाट इज दिस अग्रीमेंट?
the sale of invoice from one person to another person. So invoice is, let's say I'm a supplier to Flipkart. I have raised an invoice to Flipkart, right? Now, as per Flipkart, they owe money to me. But now I'm selling this invoice. So I have to have signed a contract saying that now I'm selling my rights to receive the money on these invoices to, let's say, Akshay. Right now, Akshay is going to get the money. So that agreement needs to get signed between it. So it's a completely legally binding, valid agreement or contracts that get signed. And once this signing happens, then the money gets transferred from investor or financials to the suppliers.
But ये agreement आप क्यों नहीं sign करते हो? Why is the seller of invoice signing the agreement with the buyer of invoice? They could both sign with you, na? So the seller could sign an agreement with you and the buyer could sign an agreement with you. And because वो anyway escrow में आ रहा है तो.
नहीं, so escrow is not my account. Escrow is an account of the investor itself, right? So अगर buyer जो है वो मेरे को पैसे नहीं ट्रांसफर कर रहा है. इट्स नॉट ट्रांसफरिंग मनी टू मी. जो आप अग्रीमेंट बता रहे हो उसमें क्या होगा कि आई एम साइनिंग विद, सो आई हैव परचेज फ्रॉम द सेलर and then I'm selling it to the buyer. So the buyer has to basically transfer the money to me and then I need to transfer the money to that guy. So we are saying that in that case, there is a big leap of faith that buyer will be taking up because they're giving it to me. So what I do is I work like a true blue exchange. I say you do the direct transfer to it, right? So just like your NSE, BSE, it's just facilitating the trade. They're not being part of it. They're just monitoring this entire thing. So we become the administrator. We are also a party into the agreement. We also become third party saying that we are monitoring this entire, and there is a lot of fiduciary responsibility that comes to us also because the money will come into an escrow account and we have to transfer and all those things. But what we do is we say that you do the direct transaction so that I remove me from the equation to say that you are directly taking care of things.
Okay. And so, like version 1 of product was where you were manually getting agreement signed. फिर ये आगे कैसे improve हुआ?
No, version 1 of product I said was a bid and auction platform that we did, and also agreement to submit high, but it was bid and auction. And then we started realizing very soon कि it's time consuming process and nobody is liking it because जैसे किसी buyer ने पहले bid किया कि अच्छा मैं इसके लिए 30 days के इनवॉइस के लिए 2% का डिस्काउंट चाहिए. सेलर ने बोला नहीं दो नहीं, मैं आपको 1.5% दूंगा. फिर दूसरा वाला बोला नहीं मैं 1.8 दूंगा. अब ये इसमें बैक एंड फोर्थ होने में इट वाज गेटिंग अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम एंड फंडामेंटली वी रियलाइज दैट दिस बिड ऑक्शन प्लेटफॉर्म इज नॉट वर्किंग. And then we moved to a buy now platform, which is we take a leaf out of eBay's book, and eBay was a bid auction. They moved to buy now mostly. We take a leaf out of eBay and we also become a buy now. So we said that, okay, as a seller of the invoice, you put what is the rate you are comfortable selling. And if the financials is fine, they will do a fastest finger first, and whoever comes and takes the invoices, he will get the invoice. So we went into that mode. So that was version 2 of the product, and we are still on that version 2 only till now.
Okay. So when you said if the financials are fine, ये कैसे check होता है if the financials are fine?
Financial?
Like you said that the seller can just upload the invoice, set his price, and if the fun.
Correct. So let's say कि I'm a seller. मैंने Flipkart के invoices upload किए. I said कि यार 50 लाख के invoices हैं और 30 days में payment होने वाला है. You give me, let's say, some 49 lakhs 50,000 and it's your, right? So let's say मैंने 1% का discount दिया कि 1%. Now there are a lot of investors on the platform जो वहाँ पे खड़े हैं. उनको लग रहा है कि यार Flipkart पे मेरे को 1% ठीक है या फ्लिपकार्ट पे 1% कम है, राइट? सो जिसको लगता है कि फ्लिपकार्ट पे 1% ठीक है वो ही इमीडिएटली बाइज, राइट? सो इमीडिएटली द मनी मूव्स फ्रॉम द बायर्स अकाउंट टू द सेलर्स अकाउंट, और जिसको नहीं है वो उसको बाई नहीं करेगा. So then it becomes it's like a market price in NSE, right? So analogy is
डिस्कवरी, प्राइस डिस्कवरी.
हाँ, तो वो आप बिड ऑक्शन नहीं डाल रहे हो, आप बोल रहे हो मार्केट प्राइस पे, whatever is the market price I'm buying it, right? So everybody is started buying at a market price.
तो अगर आपने प्राइसिंग गलत करी तो वो बिकेगा नहीं, then you will change the price to make it sell.
Correct. So let's say somebody comes and a seller comes and say कि नहीं यार मैं 1% नहीं दूंगा, मैं तो 50 basis point ही दूँ, right? And we said कि सर मुझे नहीं लगता 50 basis point पे बिकेगा, but if you want you can still try. Right now he put 50 basis point and nobody purchased it because it's just too low a yield that he is getting, investor is getting. So बोलेगा मेरे को नहीं चाहिए वो, and then the invoice will remain unsold, and then we will go back and say कि sir let's say it's more than 24 hours or 48 hours, nobody has purchased it, you have to increase the price, or if you want to take the invoice out you can take the invoice out, right? So he said कि ठीक है आप बताओ what price, and we'll say कि maybe you can try at 1%, right? So we will put 1%. And we have some market data to say that what kind of companies go as what rate. So we can suggest that and assist him in the price discovery.
So what is the role of technology here beyond just like listing? So एक तो listing platform है जिसमें you can list. What else is the role of technology in this?
Yeah, Lord. In fact, my first reaction when we was telling this to people, this is what we want to do, right? Most of the people are like, yeah, this is undoable by technology. It's like point blank. People who has done hundi, they are like hundi.
What is that doable? What part of it like?
Because what you are trying to say is hundi, as I said, right? एक mediator होता था बीच में जो भी सारा connection करता था. अब हम बोल रहे हो mediator नहीं है, उसकी जगह पे टेक्नोलॉजी और डेटा है. आप डेटा देखो, राइट? सो व्हाट यू आर शोइंग द डेटा इज कि देखो ये जो एंकर कंपनी है, जो फ्लिपकार्ट जैसी कंपनी है, जो भी है वो अच्छी कंपनी है, उसका ये फाइनेंशियल्स है, ये डेटा है, और ये जो सप्लायर उसको सप्लाई करता था उसका ये फाइनेंशियल्स है और ये चीजें हैं, राइट? दिस इज द प्रीवियस डेटा लुक्स लाइक, ऐसा इनके बीच में रिलेशनशिप है, राइट? एंड then you are doing all this transaction through KredX, right? So all this data coming together, all this data working together, and then there is a escrow layer, right? So the payment is getting going and coming through this escrow layer. And if I fast forward it to today, now we are managing over $500 million in payment that flows through us every month. So wo without technology ko possible nahi hoga with a team size of ours. So in the back end we build the entire sort of a discounting system, right? Similar to a loan management system, we have a discounting management system in the background where 95% of what we do is automated and 95% of what we do is completely at instant. So as soon as you do a transaction on a KredX platform, you as a buyer, you go to a KredX platform and say, I want to buy a Flipkart or a Tata invoice. You sign a contract, a digital contracts open up, you sign it, right? Similar to your DocuSign kind of a thing or a Aadhaar-based OTP, you sign it and the money will flow from your account to the vendor account closed.
Money कैसे flow करेगा automatically? वो buyer को करना नहीं पड़ेगा?
So what happens is works like a trading platform. So similar to your trading platform, जैसे आप ट्रेडिंग करने से पहले पैसे डालते हो अपने अकाउंट में, right? So similarly आप अपने वॉलेट में, KredX वॉलेट में पैसे डालोगे and that money is lying there. Once you buy it, as soon as if you're not buying it, the money is lying in your account. जब आप बाय करोगे नेक्स्ट उतना पैसा आपके अकाउंट से निकल के वो सेलर के अकाउंट में चला जाएगा. And when money comes back from the anchor, from the Flipkarts of the world, then the money will automatically go into your wallet again. वहाँ से आपको withdraw करना है, withdraw करो.
Okay, and this wallet would also be on your escrow account only.
Yes. All these things is only on my on escrow. So my base of the entire payment is the escrow.
Got it. Okay. ठीक है. So typically for a buyer, the journey would be they would sign up on the platform. कुछ KYC करते होंगे वो.
So similar to आपका trading platform की तरह होता है. You come to the platform, you do a KYC, you create your account, you do a KYC, and then post the KYC are done. We basically send them a mail that your KYC is under verification. We verify the KYC. Once the KYC get verified, then one of our RMs will call the customer, brief them about की product क्या है, कैसे है, क्या नहीं है, just to nuances of the product. So not everybody understand. कई बार greed में लोग आ जाते हैं कि यार यहाँ पे अच्छा नहीं मिल रहा है, चलो. So we explain them, we'll tell them कि क्या है product, क्या नहीं है. So this could be a 30 minutes to 45 minutes call with the investor. And once they are fine with this entire thing, then we go and say कि ठीक है, now you can start. So initially hand holding चाहिए होगा. कुछ किसी को या कि यार ये बता दो कैसे करना है. So all those things we do for 1 or 2 transactions, and then after that they start doing on its own.
So then I guess once then they would probably browse, they would find something they like, then they would load the wallet and then do the transaction.
Correct. So mostly what people does is they also start small sometimes, right? So they say कि चलो ठीक है यार, एक 5 लाख का transaction करके देखते हैं क्या होता है, right? How it works, right? And once they get comfortable, then they will say कि चलो ठीक है आप बड़ा amount करते हैं.
So इसमें like what does the buyer see when he's browsing? He sees the annualized return and the company name.
Correct. So he sees a company against whom the invoice is raised. He also sees what is the annualized return on it, expected annualized return. It sees the maturity period, कि 30 days or 60 days or 45 days or whatever it is. We also give a KredX score. So KredX score is based upon multiple things, कि vendor कैसा है, enterprise कैसा, आपस का relationship कैसा है, KredX के साथ कितने दिनों से involved है, उसके basis पे KredX score आता है. And this is the short sort of summary on this deal. फिर एक व्यू ले जाओ तो एक लंबा चौड़ा स्टॉक मार्केट रिपोर्ट टाइप्स का एक रिपोर्ट स्टार्ट हो जाता है, जिसमें यू कैन रीड मोर डिटेल्स की व्हाट आर द डिफरेंट रेशियोज, फाइनेंशियल रेशियोज कैसे हैं, वेंडर के कैसे हैं, इंटरप्राइज के कैसे हैं. यू कैन रीड इनटू, इवन इफ यू डोंट हर्ड द नेम, लेट्स से टोयोटा का आपने नाम नहीं सुना, यू कैन गो थ्रू द फाइनेंशियल रिपोर्ट एंड से कि अच्छा वेदर दे आर फाइनेंशियली साउंड और नॉट साउंड. सो अगर लेट्स से आपने बोला कि मुझे 5 लाख का बाई करना है एंड आपके वॉलेट में 5 लाख रुपए हैं, तो इमीडिएटली अग्रीमेंट विल गेट ओपन and you can sign the agreement, and once agreement signed, वो एक OTP और 2-factor authentication ये सब होता है, and then the money will move from your account to vendor account, and you get an agreement signed by vendor कि बस signed by seller कि बस आपका ये हो गया, now you are the legal holder of these invoices. If the money is not in the account, then it will open up your payment gateway and or it will prompt you कि बस आप transfer करो नेफ्ट या RTGS करके you transfer करो.
So buyers can do fractional buying, like they don't have to put, they can just buy 2 lakh.
Buy the footprint. Yes, they can buy a fractional also. So they get a fractional proportionate ownership on that, and they get the pro rata rights. So जैसे जैसे invoice के पैसे आएंगे, everybody will get paid accordingly of that.
Okay, this also then unlocks liquidity because of that fractional part. तो किसी का 50 लाख का इनवॉइस है तो उसको liquidity मिलना बहुत मुश्किल है.
हाँ, कई प्लस डाइवर्सिफिकेशन, राइट? इवन बिगर इज डाइवर्सिफिकेशन. मेरे को 50 लाख का डालना भी है एज ए इन्वेस्टर, बट मेरे को एक इनवॉइस पे नहीं डालना है, जस्ट टू मच ऑफ अ रिस्क, राइट? सो मैं आई वांट टू पुट इट डाइवर्सिफाई करना चाहता हूँ, तो मैंने 5-5 लाख लेके 10 इनवॉइसेस पे डाल दिया, राइट? सो इट्स जस्ट अ गुड prudent practice to diversify your investment also.
Okay. And do you also offer like a portfolio management, like that you can tell us that you want to put this much money and we will manage your portfolio for you? I'm again going to equity में जैसे होता है.
So we don't do a portfolio management purpose. So there are different kind of people, right? So we have people who are ultra HNI which are 55-60 years old also. There are corporate treasury who are run by people who are 55-60 years old. तो वो बोलते हैं यार ये सब ई-कॉमर्स मेरे को नहीं चमकता, ये मेरे को नहीं समझ में आ रहा है. आई वांट टू, टाटाज है तो बहुत ठीक है, मतलब I trust Tata with my life, I can put Tata. But at the same time, there are a lot of young HNIs, young people who said कि यार ये पुरानी कंपनीज तो मुझे नहीं समझ में आती, but Flipkart, Amazon, I'm good with, right? So there are different people, different views in terms of. So what we do is we sort of handhold people in terms of what kind of risk you want to take. So in terms of building their portfolios, the RMs will help कि सर आपको कितना लगाना है. So somebody say कि यार मेरे को 1 crore डालना है, तो ऐसा ठीक है, आपको 1 crore डालना है तो आप 10 लाख इसमें डाल दो, 10 लाख इसमें डाल दो, 5 लाख इसमें डाल दो, right? So you build a portfolio which is a good diversified portfolio.
So do you eventually see well, these RMs are a cost center for you, no? You could replace them with technology also.
Yes and no, both, because there is a lot of manual part also into it. So fundamentally these RMs are who are also working with these investors to maybe get larger wallet share of their wallets, and also asking them to invest in it, or maybe cross sell tomorrow to some other products that we are launching. India में क्या है ना कि मतलब and especially the clientele of the investor that we have, ultra HNIs, if you don't talk to them, you will not feel comfortable. You cannot go completely online and say, yeah, it's robo advisory will not work, for example, right? So
And what is the number of investors you have on the platform?
Closer to now, we will be reaching possibly more than 30,000 now.
Achha. And what is the average investment amount per investor? Matlab, how much do they invest on an average? Like, matlab, I want to understand, are these like really big investors? Are they medium-sized investors?
So they're mostly big. So our minimum ticket size for investment is 3 lakhs. It's still a sort of a evolving asset class, and it will still have some kind of an inherent cues or inherent problem related to it. And for example, the inherent problem is आपने बोला 90 days, but payment 90 days की जगह 30 days में आता है, right? Because you don't control how the payment is coming. It's a third party who's doing the payment. All e-commerce companies have started paying faster during COVID because they were churning more. Most of the people have started buying online, so they need their supply chain to work faster. So they start releasing money faster, right? In some cases, we have seen other way around, right? So in offline retail, what happened? इसकी ऑफलाइन रिटेल में जहाँ पहले 90 डेज पे पेमेंट होता था वो 150 डेज पे पेमेंट चला गया बिकॉज सारे स्टोर्स बंद थे nobody was paying right nobody was buying offline so what happens is कि a lot of times people start panicking जैसे कि यार आपने 90 बोला था 90 का 94 कैसे हो गया सिमिलरली पीपल विल से कि यार आपने 90 डेज बोला था मैं तो 90 डेज के लिए पैसे डाला था आपने 30 डेज में पैसे क्यों वापस दे दी सो दीज आर द न्यूआंसेस ऑफ द थिंग्स
So I've understood the investor side. What about the seller or the vendor side? Now, so you present information about the vendor, information about the company. ये कैसे source करते हो?
Yeah, we source it from the vendor itself. Vendor से source कर लेते हैं. Then there are third party sites.
मतलब he has to give you his books of accounts and
Financials, yeah, book of account, financials, all those things. We can also source from, there are a lot of third party companies which provide you these information. So we get all this data, but क्या होता है कि जो बैलेंस शीट ये सब रहती है वो काफी लंबी चौड़ी a lot of things are there, right? So I have a team which basically consume this report and make it more readable. If a buyer comes back and say, I want more information, we are ready to give them more information.
okay. And how does the KredX score get calculated?
So KredX score is a proprietary score. As I said, ML-based score, which works into multiple things. It takes into account the anchor's profile, right? Like Flipkart, Tata Group's profile. It also takes into account the vendor profile. It takes into account the relationship between vendor and the anchor. And then it takes into...
How do you get this data? Relationship का data?
This is the sales data. So sales data, I see that कि अच्छा ये 1 साल से है, 2 साल से, 10 साल से sales कर रहा है.
वो vendor की book से आप read कर लेते हो?
वेंडर के बुक से मिल गया प्लस वेंडर और सेलर के बीच में जो है कितने दिन में जनरली पेमेंट होता है पेमेंट ड्यू डेट इज ऑलवेज लेट्स से 30 डेज या फिर कभी 30 दिन में पेमेंट हो रहा है कभी 180 दिन में पेमेंट हो रहा है राइट सो ऑल दोस थिंग्स इन्फॉर्मेशन गेट्स इनटू इट आई आल्सो लुक इनटू
ये सारा बुक से मिल जाता है वेंडर बुक से
सारा बुक से मिल जाता है करेक्ट then I also get a relationship between anchor and me right so anchor and me means let's say Flipkart के मैं 50 vendors कर रहा हूँ तो how Flipkart is with me, right? Not only with this vendor, but overall, how Flipkart is paying to all the vendors, right? And then I also look into, let's say, vendor जो है वो Flipkart और Amazon दोनों को बेच रहा है. तो how is that vendor's overall relationship with Amazon even with, let's say, I'm not doing Amazon, but Amazon के साथ उसका क्या relationship करके हो रहा है, right? So मेरे को वो सारा information मिल रहा है, तो I put this 5 more variables into it, and then I scores get calculated. And this scores gets literally sort of balanced on a daily basis. तो जैसे जैसे पैसे आते जा रहे हैं, cash flow change होता जा रहा है, it's going ऊपर नीचे in terms of that.
And this is what, a score out of 100?
Earlier it was a score out of 100. We have recently changed and make it a KredX score 2.0, which is on a scale of 1000.
Okay. And what is a good KredX score? Like
a good KredX score is anything above, let's say, 650 to 700.
Got it. And basically vendors who are consistent. I guess consistency would be the biggest thing, no? Like
yes, consistency with me, consistency of the payment that is coming. So the cash flow is absolutely. So we have a lot of triggers, for example, right? So a lot of triggers are in place. If any triggers went to the upper or red mode, then it has an impact on the scorecard. If everything continues to go in green, the scorecard score will keep on working. So we get a lot of times people who come back and say, but we do like Nami company hai. And we always say, sir, this company is with us for like 3 years, 4 years, right? We have not seen any issues in the past, and that's why the score is higher than the company whom we just onboarded. And maybe it's a large name, but we haven't done anything with that company. So all those things matters a lot.
Got it. Okay. And how many vendors do you have on the platform today?
Closer to, I think, 6,000 plus.
Okay. So there are actually more buyers than sellers, like which...
It has to be. It has to, because fundamentally we are talking about HNIs, ultra HNIs, FIs, and corporate treasury, family offices, etc. Right. So because of the HNI, ultra HNIs, the population of the buyers will always be more than the seller. And sellers we are talking about is companies fundamentally, and these two companies are like, mostly not a micro enterprises. These are mostly a medium enterprises and a little bit of small.
What kind of turnover? Like,
So we, on an average, we give them a limit of 1.5 crore. So 1.5 crore.
नहीं, but turnover क्या होता है companies का, the who get?
या टर्नओवर आप समझ लो कि एनीथिंग आप समझ लो 50 करोड़ के आसपास या 50 से ऊपर वाले. सो वी डू दो ऑन अ रूल ऑफ थंब वी डू एनीबडी. We do companies having few lakhs at turnover to 10,000 crores in turnover also, but mostly 50 to 200 crores वाली companies.
Okay. And what is the average bill size that they like for investor? You told me 25 से 50 lakh wallet.
So there is bill size is slightly sort of a misnomer here. Why I tell you is because क्या होता है कि I have a logistic vendor जिसके 1000 ट्रक्स चल रहा है, राइट. सो वो मेरे को एक दिन में उसके 1000, तो एक दिन में उसके 1000 ट्रिप्स होते हैं. वो 15 दिन का बिल इकट्ठे करेगा, मेरे को 15,000 बिल भेजेगा. सो ईच बिल इज मे बी 5,000, बट what we do is we bundle all these bills together and present as a deal of maybe few crores. तो उस तरीके का होता है. तो बिल की जो आपको वैल्यू रखेगी उसका एवरेज वैल्यू माइट बी अराउंड 2 लाख टाइप्स होगा, बट देयर इज अ वाइड fluctuation in it. We have got bills as much as 20 crore also, and we have got bills as small as few thousand also. So वो wide fluctuation में होता है. But I think a better thing to look into the deal size, and deal size on an average होता है 50 lakhs types.
So, okay, ठीक है. So I've understood vendor side, I've understood the investor side. Yeah, I want to understand the risk element here. Who bears the risk? अगर delayed payment हुई, default हो गया.
हाँ, तो मैं आपको बताता हूँ सारा चीज. So what are the risk here, right? So the one risk is basically early payment. That's not a risk fundamentally because you are in the day getting the money, you are also get some money in return. So आपकी IRR constant रहती है. That's not changing, right? So that is one. Second is your payments getting delayed.
That is a inconvenience. It's not a risk as such.
Yes, it's an inconvenience, but I'm just still putting it as a risk. The second risk is your payment get delayed, right? So your payment get delayed. So what we do is, as I mentioned it to you, we keep a margin, 20% का margin रखते हैं, right? So what happens कि अगर payment delayed होता है, but eventually get paid, the 20% margin is sufficient for me to take down into it and still get the promise into the investor. तो प्रॉमिस मिलता है प्लस एनी डिलेज जो होता है उस पर भी गिव देम 1% एडिशनल पर मंथ के बेसिस पे. सो बेसिकली लेट्स से 90 डेज का पेमेंट अगर 120 डेज में हो गया एंड 90 डेज पे आपको 3% प्रॉमिस था, तो 120 डेज में इंस्टेड ऑफ गेटिंग 4% यू गेट 5%, राइट? सो 1% एडिशनल मिलता है. So that way again, it's not a risk, just you get more money out of it. The third risk is, and the major risk is basically कि payment ही नहीं आया, right? So payment hasn't happened. Now payment not happening, again let's break it down into multiple things. Payment क्यों नहीं हुआ? पहला payment नहीं हुआ कि invoice fraud था, invoice raise ही नहीं किया था, right? But then every invoice that comes on our KredX platform, we verify it with the anchor, and anchor verify करता है कि उसको raise किया गया genuine invoices है. अगर वो invoice का लो के किसी भी रीजन से ये हो गया कि नहीं ये genuine invoice नहीं था, KredX will pay the entire money to the investor. So that is gone. The second is there is a trade dispute, right? So trade dispute होता है, तो trade dispute generally gets solved in terms of it will get delayed, but it's not that payment नहीं आएगा. Trade dispute हुआ कि हाँ भाई साहब आपने कुछ पैसा ऐसा दिया, कुछ पैसा वैसा दिया, something like that. The second part of trade dispute,
ये quality issues.
हाँ, क्वालिटी इश्यूज के लेके तो आपने फिर एडिशनल सामान भेज दिया है कुछ करके, eventually the payment will happen. So again, it goes into delayed payment and you still get additional money. The third thing that can happen also on trade dispute is कि let's say कि कुछ major dispute हो गया, अब आपने बोला कि बस इस invoice का payment ही नहीं करूँ, right? But my arrangement with the anchors are always that कि not only you will do the payment for this invoice, but you will do payment for all invoice into this escrow account, right? So let's say invoice number 1 का payment नहीं आया मेरे पास, but invoice number 2 का payment आया, I will take the money of invoice 2 and pay it to the, right? So वो problem भी solve होगा. Now third part why payment has not happened is let's say कि anchor has went bankrupt. Anchor के पास पैसे नहीं थे, उसने मना कर दिया कि बस मैं anchor पैसे नहीं दूंगा, sorry. Right? So anchor went bankrupt is again a very rare case क्योंकि हमारा जो invoices होता है it's mostly 90 days, right? So 90 days से ज़्यादा कुछ जाएगा नहीं. So 30 to 90 days में a company going from good to worst is only possible when there is a fraud that has happened by multiple agencies including auditors, including rating agencies. तो once in a blue moon वो केस हो सकता है, जैसे आपका few हुआ था in the past, few companies. But what we do is we also do our own rating agency. So we don't rely entirely on the external rating agencies. We do our own enterprise scoring, which looks into account a lot of more recent data rather than just a credit scoring test. So credit score is also part of it, but we look into a lot of, it's like a 50 points score, which looks into enterprise score to see that. So even if company is a AAA rated, I may decline in because my score is saying that no, it's not worth doing a company. But in the worst case scenario, let's say the enterprise has went bankrupt also, the anchor has gone bankrupt also. We have a dual recourse mechanism. So what happens is I can still go back to the vendor and say, give me the money back, right? So I can still go back to, so I still can go to vendor and vendor can give me money. Now for actual default to happen, what will happen is the vendor also has to go bad, right? When vendor network become bankrupt. But then what you are talking about is that the anchor also has to go bankrupt, the vendor also has to go bankrupt, and these two events has to happen simultaneously within 90 days period, which makes this entire event extremely rare in the entire thing. Apart from that, maybe there is also risk of fraud, right? Which is like, people just, colluded and did some kind of a fraud. That is whenever that is happens, we at that time we indemnify it, right? So we have put up a lot of practices inside it in terms of it. And whenever it is possible, we indemnify the investor and give them the money back. Yeah, see, as far as possible, we try to prevent any kind of sort of default or risk that can happen to the buyer. But saying so, there is always one or two cases which can go here and there. On our legally bounded papers, the risk belongs to buyer. The buyer takes the credit risk, right? This like the final risk, let's say anchor going bankrupt or a vendor going bankrupt or both of them going bankrupt, that is the risk which is still the buyers is carrying. And for that risk,
Yeah, it is the same as buying debentures, your bond. Usme bhi
it's the same. Yes, it's the same risk as buying bonds, or it's the same risk of buying the stocks also. But those are the risks which the vendor, which the buyer is carrying.
And what is the, like, I don't know if NP is the right term, but what is the percentage like of total, like is it like 0% right now in terms of default?
Not 0%, not 0%. So in the initial days, we have seen few frauds that has happened where we indemnify and given the money. Post that, we have seen few of the cases in pandemic. Initial days, we have seen some issues. Future is, for example, is still in red for us, but they have started paying and now people are seeing the money coming back to them. Apart from that, there is one case which was fundamentally, which has hurt us a lot, which was the edge case scenario, which I was talking about. It was Cox and King. So Cox and King we did a few years back, and that was a A-rated company which went to D-rated company almost overnight. And the vendor was also completely dependent on Cox and King. So vendor also went bankrupt. So that again, the case is going against NCLT, and we are trying to recover money out of that. We have recovered in one of the vendor case where the vendor was ready to pay and the vendor is paid it. Yeah, solvent and they paid it. In another vendor case is still NCLT case.
But it will be like 0.0 something percentage.
Yes. Overall, from the total dispersal perspective, if I see, I think it's around 0.013 kind of a percent.
What are the requirements from a vendor? Like a vendor needs to give you his balance sheet, he needs to give you his books of accounts.
It's balance sheet, etc. Mostly book of accounts and all. We can still pull it from MCA, but it's just once he gets it, we do a cross check in terms of that. And apart from that, what we need is this undertaking agreement to be signed by the anchor saying that yes, they will move the money into my account, as in the escrow account, and without our NOC, they will not change the account.
Basically, that vendor's bank account is updated in the anchor's ERP. So any and all payment to that vendor goes to the escrow.
Goes through the escrow account, correct.
But the vendor can choose मुझे किस invoice को बेचना है and किसको मुझे नहीं बेचना.
It's completely democratic. The vendor can choose any invoice, right? उसको 2 महीने तक नहीं करवाना है, नहीं करवाएगा. 2 महीने के बाद he comes back and says that I want to.
तो वो फिर escrow hit करते ही सीधा vendor को transfer हो जाएगा.
Pass through हो जाता है, exactly. So we are again agreement bound with that. So in vendor side में we signed an agreement where vendor को we say कि within T+1 days, as soon as the money hits our account, within T+1 days, the money will go back to you.
ठीक है. So do you also acquire the anchors? Like what do you need from an anchor?
What we do is we have 2 ways of acquisition. One is basically where we acquire the anchor. So we go to the anchor, do a strategic tie with the anchor, and then started getting their vendors supplier, and then we help all the suppliers on it. The second is supplier themselves comes to us and get onboarded. So both the mode is there. Both the cases, the onboarding is different in terms of first anchor comes and then the vendor comes versus the vendor comes and then the anchor comes. But rest of the modules remains the same.
What is the difference in onboarding?
So in one case, you went to an anchor, you went into a strategic tie-up, and then you given the anchor that we can help all your suppliers and vendors in terms of raising money. So what it gives to the anchor, it gives them that no vendor and supplier will come to them asking for कि यार जल्दी पैसे दे दो, which is a nuisance for most of the anchors. And once that tie-up comes, then we see a large chunk of vendor suppliers coming to us. The second is basically your suppliers comes on it.
And in this case, the vendors don't need to get that agreement signed with the anchor क्योंकि वो आपने central level में agreement sign कर लिया.
Correct. वो मैंने आप already central level पे sign कर रखा है. Correct. And the second case, the supplier comes to me directly, and then the supplier goes and we do the entire onboarding, and then we work with the supplier to get the anchors on board. So we see a lot of network effect here. तो क्या होता है कि जैसे अब मैंने एंकर के पास गया, उसका सप्लायर मिला, सप्लायर ने बोला यार मेरे को दूसरा भी एंकर पे करना है, तो वो ही टेक्स मी टू दैट एंकर एंड ही टेल्स एंकर कि यार आई वर्क विद हिम विद दिस सप्लायर एंकर, तो इट वर्क्स वेरी वेल, कैन यू प्लीज और गेट हिम ऑनबोर्डेड, अगर आपको बाकी नहीं देना है तो एटलीस्ट मेरा वाला कर दो, राइट? सो वी गेट अ लॉट ऑफ नेटवर्क इफेक्ट कमिंग इनटू प्ले आल्सो.
So do you have like a sales team which like how do you do your acquisitions?
We do. Yeah, so we have a large sales team which does the acquisition. So both on the anchor side as well as on the supplier side, directly the acquisition works.
Okay. So what is the regulation here? Like, for example, a stock exchange is regulated by SEBI. So you are also in a way like an exchange or a market. So what kind of regulation are you covered by?
So I think we have submitted to RBI long back our entire working when we started up, saying that this is what we are trying to do. And post that, we had multiple rounds of discussions with RBI. I think, as I said, we are possibly, getting parked in an area which is not getting regulated. But however said so, in our last discussion with RBI, they were very clear that they want to regulate us. We also want to get regulated because it gives us a lot of trust with everybody, right? People will start trusting us more in the second, and it's more a selfish thing, but it also create a lot of barrier to entry for any new player to come into it. But yes, I think it's a right time to get regulated. The only request that we have done to the regulators is that don't force fit us into one thing, but basically create a regulation for what we are doing, then force fitting us, because there are a lot of benefits that we are providing. Right? Indirectly, possibly we are helping 6,000 MSME, and we have created more than 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs jobs. I don't know. Even during COVID scenario, we were one of the only financials at that time who was still dispersing, who was still helping MSME. So the request was always to RBI is to not force fit us into any round peg into square holes kind of a thing, but create something which is what we are doing, right? And then regulate. So we are self-compliant. We do all the KYC in the proper way, what RBI asks for all regulated entities. Our entire fund flow is completely digital, so there's no way cash can enter into it. So from that basis, all these things is a complete audit trail. All those things are there.
Tell me about your funding journey. Like, when did you do your first fundraise?
So we raised the first fund from Line Venture Partners in September 2015. And then we raised our second round.
This was like pre-product 2015.
Not pre-product, but as I said, 28 June is when we did the first transaction also. So few transaction has been done, but you can still say it's a seed round. It was initial days of it that was happened. So that was our first seed round. Then we did our second round with Sequoia in again September 2016. I think considering we are an extremely asset-light company and I don't like a larger team like a 1,000-member team, we keep it a smaller team. We didn't need the raise for us to raise another money for good amount of time. And then we did the third round just before pandemic in December 2019 with Tiger Global.
Okay. How much did you raise from Tiger?
Tiger, we raised total 26 million.
Amazing. And what was your valuation, like, or what is or was, like, whatever is the number that is available?
So we valued at that time, we got valued at around 156 post fund.
Okay. And so you said you have a small team. What is the size of your team? Like
145, I guess, to be more precise. You can say 150 member.
How many of these are doing that role, like helping the investors?
Both the side. On the investor side, 6-member team.
You have a separate team for sellers also, like. the vendors, an RMT?
Yes, we have a separate team for vendor side is a larger team. There is a total 20-25 member team is on the vendor side of it. And the investor sides, I think we only have 6 member team.
How is that? Because you have a smaller vendor base and like your investor base is 5x of your vendor base.
Yes. It's also to do with the kind of persona of both the set, right? So both, as I said, most of the people on this side is family office, FIs, corporate, ultra HNI. So these are people who are very conversant with tech as a platform.
Okay, so they're like sophisticated investors.
Yeah. They're sophisticated investors. They know they want your time mostly on phone. So you call on phone and you send message on WhatsApp. In case of a vendor side, it's mostly like they want to see your face. They want to meet. You want to go and meet. You want to introduce them to the platform. For them, they're not savvy guys. So it's a lot of push that is required in terms of bringing them on boards and working on to that.
Right. So this team is also doing the sales, or there's a separate sales team, the acquisition?
So this is they both the teams are doing the sales also. So sales plus RM both they do the same thing. So it's a sales plus account management or relationship management.
The rest would be like technology and central functions and risk and
Yeah, the biggest one is technology. Technology is closer to what I think maybe 50-60 member team, tech and product including. And then around 15-16 would be marketing team. And because we rely a lot on marketing to bring us the thing, I think the rest is a 6-7 members team. And then operation team is there, which is again another 10-12 member team. And then there is legal, finance, HR, that's it. And useless people like me who doesn't add any value, which I always say support.
okay. The marketing team does like they do like Google, Facebook ads to get vendors.
Yeah,
Like,
both online and offline marketing, partnership management, any kind of strategic tie-up, all those. So, for example, let's say if I have to tie up with a larger partners, right? For example, an IFA or a large BSA, right? Or I want to do a tie-up both arrangement also, right? So I can give them my vendor base to cross-sell and they give us their customer base to cross-sell. So all those kind of things, events, PR, content management, all those activities is part of it. I also have a team called NPDS team, which is new product development and strategy, which mostly works on bringing out new product, new innovation, do a quick MVP to see that if the product is scalable, if that is scalable, then you scale it up. And the idea is to take a product from 0 to 1 and 1 to, let's say, 20, 25. And after that, you ship it out to full-fledged unit where, you hire a team and set it up separately in terms of that.
so what are some of the new products that you have launched? So besides this core product?
Yeah, so apart from this core product, we have also launched export-import financing recently. So we got a license from IFSCA in Gift City in Ahmedabad, and we are one of the 4 companies to get a license to launch a international trade finance services platform. So we set up a team in Gift City where we have also as a team in Singapore to support them in terms of it. So the idea is to do the entire import financing part of it. The same problem again, right? In the export is a much possibly bigger segment and the problem is much wider because they have to ship the product and wait for, more time for that. So that is one product that we have started scaling up very well.
And the model is the same, like the vendor will get the anchor to sign an agreement, transfer to escrow account.
Correct. It's just with some changes. Yes, account changes are there. In some cases, we also do insurance. So there are insurance players who insure the trade receivables based upon whoever is a buyer in country. So there are international trade insurance guys who can large.
So what is this insurance against? Like in case your ship drowns or?
Not exactly. It's most around. Yes, it can happen about ship drowning also. But it basically all trades get insured depending upon who is the buyer, right? So if the buyer is this and then the seller has this profile, so the insurance company will insure the trade between them. So you can also get the trade insured and then you take that.
What are the risks they are insuring against?
So risk is insuring there is mostly once the product is got shipped, then from end to end, they are ensuring that the buyer is going to pay the money. If the buyer is not going to pay the money, then they will pay. Right, so they have that arrangement and all those things. So there are like billions of dollars companies who are doing just this. So it works on both the side. It works on also account. It can work on line of credit letters also that comes from bank. It can also work on these insurance companies. So different formats are there, slightly different in terms of it. And an export import, what we generally say is whatever pitches we have the lowest cost of capital in the market. So we source the capital not from India, but mostly from abroad. And there's no hedging risk because we keep the currency in the same format, right? So that way we were able to get, and we have some very good people who are good to very good tie-ups through which our source of capital remains that. So in a lot of cases, we have given people offer which is anything from 100 to 200 basis point less than the best offer they have got in the market. So it's a clear cut, winning proposition that we are doing. Apart from exports,
So, for example, like say if Walmart is buying something or Target is buying something from an Indian vendor, then that invoice you will find a buyer in the US only because they would already know Target, Walmart, and that invoice is payable in dollars. So,
not necessarily. I can find out buyer in, let's say, other country, let's say Japan also. Now, Japan is at a perpetually 0%. They would love to buy something at 4-5%, right? They will buy it in dollar and I will return them the money back in dollar. But 4 to 5% is like godsend there. So just become a easy deployment in this kind of, and Japan has like lots of money, right? So you can get institutional buyers also. And mostly in export import, you get institutional buyer who has like capacity to put a lot of like larger chunk, like 100, $200 million, $500 million kind of thing. So that
this export business, I'm pretty sure would eventually be much bigger than your domestic business.
India has a both the market. Yeah. Very frankly, we started with domestic thinking about that we'll quickly move into export, but the domestic itself is such a big market in India and there's a growing story. Right. Even right now, the export import piece, our focus is mostly the export from India. Right. So we are not has gone into other sector, but yes, considering it's a domestic consumption story versus international trade. And if tomorrow we will go and say that we can look into any countries, not just one leg in India, then of course it become a bigger chunk.
Okay. What other new products are you working on?
Other than that, what we also started is, so we were into the supplier vendor side of it. We also started looking into saying that we will become a supply chain finance, full-fledged supply chain finance. So our vision of the company is to become an operating system for supply chain finance in the entire world. So what I mean is by operating system and supply chain finance is we are doing wonders for suppliers. We started doing dealer, distributor, retailer like also. So for an anchor, we were doing their account payable. We have started doing their account receivable also. We have started doing their export import piece also. And why OS is because I'm not putting my own capital, right? So I'm more like a operating system where anybody can plug in. So an insurance company can get plug in, a logistic company can get plug in, anybody, a bank can get plug in. I'm not competing with a bank also. So everybody can get plugged in. So what we created is sort of unheard of in a channel financing or dealer distributor financing area, which is we are calling it as a BNPL for B2B payment. And why we are calling it as a BNPL is fundamentally because to crack the instant dispersal here. And what I mean by instant dispersal is from end to end, we can do the dispersal in less than 1 minute. So why BNPL is because think it's more like a payment gateway, right? So it will be connected at your B2B marketplaces, at your dealer management system, at your retailer management system. Even let's say Metro Cash and Carry, it can be at your checkout counter, where you can just scan the code, do some smaller, paper upload. And by the time you reach there, you will get the money in the account. So money in the account means you get a sanction letter, you sign the NASH and all those things happen. And then when you buy it, the payment directly goes to the seller who is sold you. So currently what happens is mostly it's cash and carry business. So what we are now providing is saying that you engage me at your dealer management system, or your dealer is ordering from your DMS system. And immediately he can check out saying that, okay, I want to check out using KredX BNPL. And KredX, he does the KYC checks and immediately we give him a limit. Against that limit, he goes and buy the product. So what happens to the brand is now, since the dealer has got access to the credit, they can buy more, right? So earlier we were saying, let me buy only this much because it's a cash and carry business. I can only buy this much. But when you give them credit, they will say that, okay, let me buy more because see what is happening today in today's world is everybody is competing everywhere, right? So even the dealer, distributor, retailer cannot afford for things not to be there, right? Because there is Jeptos of the world or 10 minutes delivery and 30 minutes delivery and 45 minutes delivery is coming up. So no retailers wants to give an options to the customer that they should go and order online. All these things can happen within 1 minute, right? So you don't need to wait for 1 month for the dealers to get the money and all those things. And whatever kind of tech integration required, we can provide it to. So in that side, we are mostly working with banks and NBFCs. There are no ultra HNI corporate traces. So this is mostly through banks and NBFCs that we are doing that.
So in this business, the dealer is getting like a, in a way, 0% financing because the cost is borne by the seller.
Correct. Most of the cases, almost 80%, the dealer distributor is not bearing the cost. They are getting a 0%. But the benefit to the brands are that brands can sell more. So we have seen almost 30% more by the existing dealers and distributor, while they are attracting almost 40% new dealers and distributor to buy from the brands. So that's the benefit for the brand. So overall, almost 2x increase in sales is happening for a particular brand if they connect with us on the dealer. And also there are a lot of hybrid model that works, right? So for example, some brands are working where they say up till 60 days of interest they are bearing. But if the dealer wants to take more than 60 days, then the cost will be borne by the dealer.
How do you do the risk underwriting of the dealer, or who's taking the risk? Is it the brand, the seller, or the dealer?
Yeah, no, mostly banks and NBFCs are taking up the risk. It's not the brands that are taking up the risk, but with the entire underwriting is completely automated. So we have our in-house risk decision engine. We code the entire risk decision engine. So it takes into account your credit bureau score, it takes into account your sales data, it takes into account your vintage, it takes into account your bank statement analysis also gets done. It looks into your...
So that vintage and sales data is given to you by the seller, like a Metro Cash and Carry would share that data with you.
Correct. So sellers provides me the sales ledger. I also get GST. So I'm connected to GST also. So I get his overall sales, not just the sales between these buyer seller, but the overall sales of the buyer also. I get bank statement analysis, all these things being done and on the fly, and within 1 minute you get the sanction.
How do you get bank statement?
Bank statement has to get uploaded, or they can just log in into net banking through my portal, and we access the bank statement. Yes.
Okay. And this is because you need to disburse in under a minute. So this you can't do through a marketplace model because that will take too much time. So this is therefore with NBFC.
Yes, exactly. We need NBFC to buy into it first. And it's also because 1 minute is mostly got possible because of our entire engine that we have created, right? So there is at least 5 different data sources that we are connected to. And then the entire data is getting churned by our proprietary decision engine. So everything gets churned in terms of what are different nodes different. And runtime, we also score him, right? So there is another score that runs in, it's a BNPL score, which also gives some kind of a score. And based on a lot of parameters, we look into and say, okay, we are approving. So once the approval happens, sanction release, then he signs the sanction, and then the dispersal happens to the seller directly.
Okay. Okay. And that there is a line of credit from NBFC through which that sanction goes automatically.
Correct.
Okay. And you have like a first loss default guarantee with the NBFC?
In some cases, yes. Yeah, in some cases, we have given them the first loss default guarantee. In some cases, we are not. So it depends upon what kind of arrangements that you want to do. So if you want to go to lower rates, then you have to give the first loss default guarantee. It's also that sometimes, banks and NBFCs are not aggressive to take that risk, right? So, but you are very confident because of maybe additional data that you know or additional information that you know about the industry. So we are willing to take that loss and want to build up that book about it, right? So what we do is we see for some times, and then if the data looks good, then we go back to the NBFC, say that, this much FLTG, now you see it doesn't make sense, so we can remove it. So all those things can be worked out.
Got it. Okay. And how much do you earn in this? Like the spread is shared between you and NBFC.
So again, it's not the NBFC and us, we share the spread in terms of it. So there could be some base rate for the NBFC, or over and above that, it can get shared between us and NBFCs.
And what is the cost of this? Like 12%, 18%?
Yeah, we go as low as 10% here to as high as 24%, but over and above 24%.
And this totally depends on the distributors.
Because fundamentally, the money is going to come from this dealer, distributor, retailer, not from the anchor.
Okay. And what else? What other products?
Apart from that, so what we also did is possibly we are the only fintech company to have done that. Is we also created a tech product, which we call it Capital, which is a APAR tool. So what we do is considering Anchor is our main pillar against which we positioned everything. So we said to Anchor to manage his vendor supplier side, his dealer distributor side, export import side, we created a tool to manage his account payables and account receivable. So this is a tool which we give to the Anchor, say that you plug this with your ERP and all the data you can manage it at one side also, right? So not only for financing and discounting, but we can help you the entire API. So let's say they want to do an early payment, a direct discounting thing. They can do it. They can do reconciliation. They can do TDS. They can do GST pay. They can do all the BI on top of that. A lot of forecasting on top of that. So there's a tool to manage your entire cash flow. And if there is a cash deficit or cash surplus is there, then we will come back and say that, sir, there is a deficit or there is a surplus. Do you need finance?
And this is like a free tool, right? Because you are monetizing this through the lending.
Correct. So it's a free tool that we are giving it a lot of customers. Of course, sometimes there is a upselling that is also possible. So, for example, if we have given an anchor AP and AR, if they need, there could be an upselling which we charge them separate. But mostly we have kept it as one side as a free tool too.
Okay. What do you want to double down on? What is your key focus area for the next couple of years?
Here, I think my invoice discounting is pretty much set. It's a growing business which continue to do. Our current focus is on the BNPL for B2B, which is the dealer distributor retailer financing. And the second is the export import piece. So these are the two things which we are mostly focusing upon.
The BNPL for B2B, you also have players like, I think, PropCap, ePay Later. These are some of the players in that space, right? Who do it.
Correct. There are a lot of players also in that segment, but I think what I said is something what we have cracked is less than 1 minute. And that's why we have seen a lot of companies coming to us. A lot of companies which we have initially, we have started it 6 months back. So it's not a large time that has happened. But the initial customers who has worked with us, they actually came back to us and told us, they literally called me and they said, Manish, we were working on 2 assumptions. One assumption is my sales increases, and second assumption is my dealer distributors are happy, and both the assumptions are pretty much validated. So now we want to double down or triple down into it. So tell me what else to do. But I don't want to work with a bank for a 1 month period. So time is essential. I cannot have 1 month of other things. So your entire process looks very fine. So can I work with you?
Yeah, that 1 minute thing is definitely a big pull.
Yeah, and what we are doing is in the end, we are also working with bank, but the entire 1 month negotiation and all those things we are doing with the bank. So the anchors, our sellers are not getting visibility to that side of it, right? So it's like I'm doing the dirty work, but I'm still giving you the customer experience which I promised you to do.
Essentially, you are like how a company can plug in a payment gateway. So similarly, they can plug in BNPL.
Yes, exactly. So that's why I say I'm like an API, right? You plug me anywhere and at point of sale, you can just check out. You can say that I want to pay through KredX BNPL.
Amazing. Okay. What is your revenue number? Like what is the number you track? Like, is it disbursement? Is it like, what is the amount financed?
Yeah, so the different products are different numbers that we track. In invoice discounting, we track the disbursement that we do. What is the invoice discounting that we do. So we currently make closer to around 200 crores a month on that side. In BNPL, we track basically the total portfolio values that we have on the pay. And in export import also,
what is the portfolio value there in BNPL?
We are closer to now around 100 crores here on that side. And in export import side, I think we track the total sanction that we have released so far in terms of it. So that is last month, I think $20 million or something that we did last month.
And what is your revenue? Like what you earn?
Yeah, we are right now doing an ARR of closer to around 5 million, possibly. $5 million ARR is we are into.
What do you see as your growth rate? Like by 2025, what will you be at? Like, what do you predict?
Year 2025. Okay. Hopefully we will do 2025 will do closer to revenue wise, roughly around $70 to $80 million.
Wow. That's a massive jump.
Yeah, because we started 2 new products, right? So it's the export import piece and the BNPL this piece, right? So export piece, my overall numbers will be much larger. It's a dollar, right? So I will earn the money in dollar rather than converting INR to dollars. And the BNPL is just because of the sheer volume of it. And it is just the kind of, currently we are tracking so many companies are reaching out to us that my team has to literally create a queue. So we created a queue system. We have to ask anchors that, please wait, we will come, because we never planned for it. And we are now hiring people. There are a few people supposed to come and join us. But so we have to ask them, they said, it's okay. And we are literally have to cherry pick a little bit, saying that, okay, this is a large bat, let's call them immediately.
Wow, that's a good problem to have.
Absolutely. So hopefully, let's see, keeping my finger crossed that we will reach by 2025 that much.
If you like the Founder Thesis podcast, Then do check out our other shows on subjects like marketing, technology, career advice, books, and drama. Visit thepodium.in, that is thepodium.in, for a complete list of all our shows.